And welcome back, everybody, to Exploring Faith, Pursuing Grace. My name is Daniel Rogers, and I am here with one of the most spectacular people in the entire universe, Aram Mitchell. Man,
Wow.
how are you?
Well, with an introduction like that, how can I not be spectacular? It's good to be with you, Daniel. I'm doing pretty well. It's a drizzly morning where I'm sitting out here in southern Maine near the Presumpscot River, looking over my backyard where I have some soggy backyard chickens. And I've got a candle lit and some incense, and I have this stone that I hold in my hand to help ground me when I'm having conversations, to help
Dude,
kind of like take those like jitters,
yeah,
from being recorded, like having your audio go out there into the ether and ground
yeah,
me down to the person that I am here in the flesh in this moment. So all that to say, I'm spectacular. How you
love
doing?
it. Man,
How
I'm
you?
doing I'm doing great. Look, I got to talk about The Rock. I mean, how can I not? Like that's we have to start there. Okay. Yeah, I love it. So I had a friend in high school. He was a public speaking expert. Like he won all the competitions and went to state finals and all this
Toastmasters
stuff.
and stuff?
The what now?
Toastmasters? All
Toastmasters.
those.
Oh no, it was with FFA. So
Oh, no.
the Future Farmers of America. So there's like one part of the speaking is you memorize the FFA creed, which is 5 paragraphs long, and it's still stuck in my brain to this day. Um, in fact, if I see somebody wearing like an FFA t-shirt, I'll be like, "Do you believe in the future of agriculture with a faith born not of words but of deeds?" And they
Come
just
on.
look at me like, "I have no idea what you're talking about." So okay, all right, you're not an FFA nerd. You're that's okay. But anyways, then there's this other part of public speaking where you do like extemporaneous. They'll give you a subject in like the last second or whatever. Anyways, he was great at it, and he always carried something in his hand when he spoke.
Hmm.
He told me he liked to do a paperclip because it kind of sort of blended into the environment.
Yeah.
But it's that's a very interesting tool to use. Just having that paperclip, that sort of thing to ground yourself, to remind
Yeah.
yourself that you're in reality and not dreaming or
Tactile.
whatever.
Yeah, something tactile. Like I feel like that's it's a beautiful thing. We're probably going to end up talking about earthiness and wildness and the elemental nature that we all are. But there's something to just like that tangible tactile, like we are these bodies that have edges that bump into other things, right? And sometimes, I mean, I know, I know you and I can both relate to this. Sometimes we get lost in the abstractions, right? Like our
Yes.
head just like go into the clouds, into the theory, and my goodness, that's like, I don't know, for me anyways, like that's a fun playground to play in, all of that theoretical abstract. But ultimately, right, what are those practical
Yeah.
components where the edges of us bump into the edges of others, and like, right, where justice and goodness and beauty and relation and love takes place.
That's an amazing point actually, because for so many of our listeners, and I know for me especially, getting
Mm-hmm.
lost in the abstract is
Yes.
sort of an excuse to not live in the present, right?
Yeah.
If I can sit behind this desk and read all my books and think
There are
about,
literally a lot of books behind you right now.
there's
So
quite a
common.
bit, quite a
I
bit.
love
Yeah, yeah, church history and all that boring stuff. Um, but if I can get lost in that, then I don't have to face the challenge of what does this look like outside
it.
of these walls, right?
Yes,
What does
that's
this
right.
look like outside, from behind this desk? What impact does this have on people,
Yeah.
like in the real world, real time? The people who don't know the FFA creed, like
Yeah.
just from the first few sentences, right?
Yeah.
You know, the people who aren't immersed in this language. And so having that sort of thing that grounds you to reality, that sort of brings you back to this idea that we are all part of this together. And my
Yeah.
beliefs, even if I hold them, between my two ears and don't let them out, they still affect how I live and how I see the world and have an impact on my brothers and sisters everywhere.
Sure.
Right.
For
So,
sure. Yeah,
yeah.
I had there was a sort of kind of creed, I guess, or like public statement that I had memorized. I worked for a couple of years as a children's minister for a big United Church of Christ church out in Southern California. This would have been, oh gracious, close to 10 years ago now. And we had a whole thing that we said every Sunday morning when we were together as a body of worship, and it ended with and that we may work and pray for peace and justice. And I always switched it up and made it work and play for peace and justice.
Yeah.
I mean, I have my own relationship with prayer, and it's dynamic and usually involves me putting my feet on a trail. I like to pray with my feet, but
Yeah.
I changed it to work and play for peace and justice, both just to like capture that sort of, to hold those two things in dialogue, right? Like
Yeah.
the sincerity of the work and the labor that we have to do in this world, alongside of the levity, and laughter of playfulness,
Right.
but also because like peace and justice, these abstract concepts, like they are ultimately earthbound happenings, right? They are labor, and it is playful. It's community, it's celebration, it's grief. It is the stuff of relation. So that was that. Yeah, I don't have the FFA. I'm not an FFA nerd, but I
Yeah.
have some of my own creeds that continue to haunt me in the most delicious and delightful ways. To work
Yeah.
and for peace and justice. May it be so.
And I think sometimes that prayer is one of those things that we keep in the abstract. And if we let it morph into playing,
Mm-hmm.
morph into our actions, then it means something. And but sometimes we sort of like thoughts and prayers, and that's it.
Right.
Like just throw
Right.
those out there. We've done our good deed for the day, and hopefully God will just handle all that stuff, and we can
Yeah.
just say, we're praying for you and be done with it. Like that's the
Yeah.
end of our interaction with the world. And
I found,
yeah,
yes,
so we're
I found myself saying one of the like my kind of stand-in these days for the thoughts and prayers, um, is I tell people I'm rooting for you. I'm rooting for you because
oh yeah.
I right, I'm a cheerleader. I'm championing you. Like I want what's best for you, but also I'm rooting for you. It reminds me that in order to be for others, I need to I need to lean into my own roots. I need to look for the ways that
Oh yeah.
I'm grounding, right? Like that
Right.
I'm grounding into spiritual practice and like an actual earthy, rooty, um, dusty, soil encrusted spiritual practice, because I can't be for others if I am not myself, like rooted into that capacity to be in relation.
Mm.
um right, relationships are a creative thing, and I think creativity, at least, is often, if not always, preceded um by by roots. And so I'm curious, like what those spiritual roots, or those roots of spiritual practice look like for folks listening in right now. I'm curious what it looks like for you, Daniel. I know you and I met, um kind of engaging
Yeah.
a retreat wherein we were putting down some roots together in community, that I continue to benefit from that time, those walks that we went on together. Gracious, when was that? Back in April?
March, April. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
it was the week after Easter, right, in 2022. And I plan on
Yeah.
seeing you again in 2023. I'd love
I'll
it.
be there. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And everybody else, well, maybe not everybody else. I don't know how many people are listening. If there's about 20 people listening, you can all come. If there's more than that, first come, first serve.
Yeah. Yeah, I need to go. I need to go sign up before the episode airs, don't I?
Yeah,
So, well,
definitely.
tell us about this. So, what is this place? I know it's called Discovering Renewal. So, where did this idea come from? What's it about? How did you get involved?
Yeah, yeah. The retreat that you and I met on, Discovering Renewal at Montreat Conference Center, in North Carolina, that was, I joined in by invitation of some buddies there who work at Montreat. But the concept of it was really simple. I think really simple. Um, and that is that I oftentimes will introduce myself to folks by saying, "Hi, I'm Aram, and I guide wilderness trips for people doing good things in the world." And then I ask whoever's in the group, like, raise your hand if you're someone doing good things in the world, right? So for those of you out there listening, raise your hand if you are someone doing good things in the world. And if your hand isn't up, then I imagine there's better podcasts that you could be spending your time listening to.
Right.
But the like the idea of making the world a more beautiful place, like takes a whole host, a whole ecology of efforts of good faith, of people of good faith. And so oftentimes that work, right, like the labor of leaning into the common good, is exhausting. And uh and oftentimes the work of like leading with love, the work of championing justice in this world, it leaves people in a precarious place, um in regards to their soul level energy. A lot of folks in those sorts of, either the line of work where they're care providers or faith leaders or justice workers, or even just folks with hearts oriented toward goodness and empathy and compassion, can lead to burnout. Often does lead to burnout,
Yeah.
or gets people right up to the brink. So the idea of this retreat, Discovering Renewal, was for that to not happen. Like,
Yeah.
right, or if it has happened for someone, what does it look like to rekindle that flame, right? What does it look like to not burn out, but to sustain the good work that you've got to provide? And this retreat in particular, Discovering Renewal, there are 3 different tracks. Some folks went fly fishing, some folks had a daily yoga practice. You and I think about 15 or so other folks just went up into the mountains each day and
Yeah.
went for these like long, beautiful, contemplative, sauntering walks that we interspersed with poetry and conversation and silence and tactile opportunities to hold on to stones and dip our fingers into moss. Um,
Yes.
yeah,
And
so
have
that's probably renewal.
Yeah, and having it the week after Easter was so helpful because that's, the pastors have just worked and worked and worked and worked up to that point, and that's like the big day of the year, and now they have this time to just slow down and relax
Yeah,
and discover that renewal that they so desperately need. One of
right.
my favorite activities that we did was the first activity we did on the hike. We
Remind me.
we sat on a ridge and we took
Yes,
out our notepads and we
yes,
drew a spiral,
yes,
about 4 or 5 loops, and then
yeah,
divided that up into 4 quadrants and observed from as close to us as we could to as further away from us as we could, what
yes.
we were seeing, feeling, smelling, or hearing. And
That's
then,
right.
just tracking those senses really helped us to, learn how to be here, right? How to be present.
Absolutely. Do you ever
Amazing.
put resources into your show notes with this podcast?
Yes, definitely. I definitely do.
Okay, I have a video of that spiral meditation. I'll send you a link to it if folks want to try it out.
Yeah, for
It's like
sure.
a 5 minute reflection. I'll send you a link to that so you can put that in the show notes if people want to try the spiral meditation. Yeah, I love that. It's like a way to drop into um, being the multi-sensory beings that we are, right?
Yeah.
Like here we
It
are. There's
was,
so many ways to perceive this world, and
yeah.
let's drop into some of those ways.
It was challenging because you're like, okay, what am I hearing? Well, I don't hear anything. Everybody was told to be quiet. There was that bell that went off a few minutes ago, but that's not a thing now. So what am I hearing? And you're like, oh wait, there's leaves rustling. Is
Yeah,
that a bird? And I think there was a dog barking down in the valley, at
yeah,
somebody's house. And
yeah.
you start to pick up on all these sounds and sights that you had no idea were even there.
Mm. Yeah,
Just
yeah,
amazing. It was
yeah.
such a good exercise. But probably the most impactful thing
Tell me.
was a poem.
Mm-hmm.
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 Mm-hmm. Do
Yep.
you
Speaking of your affinity for memorizing, I remember I shared this poem. It may be familiar with some of you who are listening. It's one of the goodies, Wendell
yeah,
Berry's
the
Piece of
piece,
Wild Things.
do you have it committed to memory still?
Should we try it together?
Well, I was thinking we could do a line after line.
Okay, let's do that.
All right.
I'm up for it. Do you want to start us off?
Sure. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound.
In fear of what my life and my children's lives may be.
I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds.
I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water.
And above me, I feel the day blind stars waiting with their light. And for a moment, I rest in the grace of the world.
And am free.
Dude,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, that was such a beautiful. I think we just like kind of we took that poem and just bumped into it in different ways
Yeah.
throughout the week that we spent together. And I remember, I think did I chop it up into lines and hand out lines to different people to just like
You,
memorize in collaboration? How did we do that?
yeah, we had there were groups of 3 or 4 of us at a time, and we
Mhm.
memorized each a section and then recited it together. And I loved it so much that I like just went ahead and memorized the whole thing because it meant so much to me. Seriously. The biggest line for me though was tax not their lives with forethought of grief.
Yes.
So
Yes.
much is, oh man, this could happen and this could happen and this could happen, and then boom,
Yes.
I'm in a
Yes.
terrible situation. And
Absolutely.
it might be realistic, it might be, within the realm of possibility, but that doesn't mean we should spend so much time for focusing on it and worrying about it in this moment here. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I that's so true. I I wonder if I can share something that I don't remember if we did this, but something I'll often do is um I think we did do this on the last day, like take that poem and write a poem like kind of echoing it in
Oh,
response.
yes.
And I actually have the poem that I wrote in response to it. I think it was this one I wrote in April when we were together. Can I
Yeah, go
um
for it. Go
and do
for it.
you have yours there?
I
I see
think
you.
I think so. I
Come
wanna check it to make sure it's not you know,
on.
it might be too much. So
I
I'm gonna
love I love it. We're just having a little poetry love fest here. Welcome to all who are joining all who are joining us today. Okay. Yeah, all right, I'm gonna read this because I was inspired to, and I have it pulled up here
go for
in
it.
my notes. All right, so it's yeah, when I wake in the night, inspired by Wendell Berry's The Peace of Wild Things. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and our children's lives may be. I roll over, go back to sleep, and I dream of the pelicans and their awkward flops into the sea, and how it makes me laugh to see them soaring at first with prehistoric grace, then see them diving with what I'm fooled to think must be precision, then see them slap the water in a silly crumple of wings and waves and hunger and silliness and despair wed in my dreams and make awkward babies who have feathers for fingers and anchors for feet, grow up tickling everything they touch, who move with big, slow, deliberate steps. And I wake in the morning with a new gravity in my heart and a salty smile on my face.
I love it. I remember you reading that. The
You
imagery
do?
stands out. Yeah, yeah. It was on that last day in that big pavilion, right?
That's right. Yeah, by the
Went
like
out.
the labyrinth where you can walk the labyrinth. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. We went out and did centering prayer for a bit, and then or whatever sort of meditation we wanted. I did centering prayer, and then we wrote our poems. I'll read mine as
Okay,
well. All right, here we
bring it
go.
on. Come
Yeah,
on.
whew, this one's heavy. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of rejection by my church and new friends over beliefs, I lie in bed and name my thanks. First content and then relief. I name the things that I love. I count my blessings one by one. I feel above me, before me, beyond me, behind me, and within me the infinite presence of the divine. And for a moment, I'm free. If you
Yeah.
recall, that's based off of one of the things we did with Brian, where we put our hands before us and above us and behind us and to our
Yeah.
left and to our right.
Yes.
Just
Yeah.
just trying to realize that regardless of what happens here and now, those forethoughts of grief, there is this infinite presence of love that goes through everything, and so here we are.
Yeah.
But man, yeah, it was a great time. And hey, maybe someone listening doesn't need renewal themselves, but their
Uh-huh.
pastor does.
Yeah.
That'd be a great Christmas present,
Come on.
you
I
know?
love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like,
All
hey, I
right. So,
signed you up for this retreat. You have to go. It's all inclusive. So
seriously. And
have fun.
it's after Holy Moly week. So you
Yeah,
like
there you go.
just did this thing, and yeah,
Oh
get
yeah.
over
Hey, by the way, I'm having one of our other guests from the retreat on the program with me in a few. I don't know when this is going to post. It's posting now for the person listening. It's now, so
it.
it'll be at some point. Do you remember Summer Lee? She did the fly fishing track.
Yes.
She wrote her master's thesis on the tree of life. So yeah, so
Oh,
she's going to be joining
awesome.
us too. So she can possibly tell us and sort of show off the fly fishing track a little bit and what in the world fly fishing has to do with discovering renewal.
That's so great. I
Yeah.
love it.
So
Nice.
man, okay, so let's go back in time
Okay.
to Aram. Give us your story. How did you get where you are? Like
Yes. Well, I was born alongside of the St. John River in New Brunswick, Canada, and grew up. I was quite young when we moved to the States, to Indiana. I grew up alongside the White River in Indianapolis, Indiana, riding my mountain bike down along the river there. I over over the years I've spent a good amount of time guiding wilderness trips, and one of the regular trips that I've guided is through the Paria River out in Arizona and Utah, through the Paria Canyon that follows the Paria River as it to where it flows into the mighty Colorado River.
hmm,
uh, I live now, as I mentioned earlier, in southern Maine, and a lot of days I'll take my dogs and go walk alongside the Presumpscot River, and there's this oak that I know that just leans out over the river at like a 20-degree angle, just the right sort of angle to lean in and get a big hug. Like I know that oak as the comforting oak. So I say all of that because my life has been lived in different geographies, different watersheds, um, and different kind of flows, and a couple of consistent streams in my life as I have as I've kind of moved from place to place and lived in proximity to literal rivers, literal streams, in the context of literal watersheds. A couple of consistent streams have been an interest and intrigue in human spiritual formation. I did my undergrad in biblical literature and outdoor recreation. And I went to seminary about 10 years ago, Chicago Theological Seminary, and studied ecofeminist theology.
wow.
And and so, like, along the way, alongside of religious studies and theological studies and ethical studies and biblical studies, like there's just this common thread of I'm interested in what's the stuff that forms us and shapes us and makes us more human, like more fully human, more fully alive, that that deepens us as relational beings, in contact and conviviality with other relational beings. So that's one stream, the stream of spiritual formation, and the other stream, as I mentioned, in my undergrad, kind of cut my teeth on outdoor recreation and started guiding in wilderness contexts, and that experience of exploring and sometimes companioning and guiding in wild spaces. That's another stream that has been consistent. Done that with groups of youth. I've done it with men's groups for church groups, and I've done it with people of all genders, and actually I ran an organization called Renewal in the Wilderness for about 5 years here in Maine. It was a beautiful, beautiful work. And our mission at Renewal in the Wilderness was really similar to what was happening at Discovering Renewal.
Yeah.
We asked the question, who helps the helpers? Those folks who are out there doing that good work, like who is it that's looking to support and sustain them? And so got to take people on multi-day canoe trips and hikes in the wilderness, and then also just would spend time, sometimes just took people out for 90-minute walks in
Yeah.
what John Muir called the parks and gardens of town, right? Those half wild parks and gardens of town. And so that stream, as well, of getting to just like be out in proximity to wild nature, those two things, spiritual formation, right, the idea of spirituality, and wildness, or wilderness, where those two things flow together, right, the confluence of wildness and spirituality, confluence being where two streams flow together. That's where I consider to be my kind of vocational context. That's where I like
Yeah.
to set camp, is at that confluence of wildness and spirituality. Yeah, and that's
Man,
yeah,
it's awesome.
that's where you met me. That's where we camped out, at that confluence.
Yes, yes, that's right. And one of the things that happened, I just remember there was this moment we were sitting there eating lunch on the second or third day, I guess it was. We had gone off the regular trail, sort of down this slope, and sitting
Yes,
around this this, I guess it was a place for campfires or something.
it
And I
was.
look down and I go, "Wait, we're wearing the same pants."
That's right. I have
And
my right over there. Yes.
it's my favorite pair of pants. I wear those if I can like wear those all week long. I would just wash them as much as I can, just so I can
Okay.
wear them more and more. They're the best. And
Daniel, I just want to tell you right now, if you need me to write you a permission slip, if you want to wear those pants every day of your life, you may.
dude, thank
I
you
give
so
you
much.
permission. You're welcome.
Those are my favorite ones.
Maybe
Also
maybe
have
buy
these.
2 pairs so that you can wash them and have a
Yeah,
spare. Mhm.
probably need to do that. I even have this pair that the knees unzip. You can like have
Yes.
shorts like I used to wear in the third grade,
Yes.
and great. But anyways, at that moment there was like we are now friends. We are now eternal friends. And like I
Yep.
already liked you before. You already had me won over with the Wendell Berry poem, but now it's on. Like
Your
you're not going
pants,
to get
your
rid of me
pants,
now. Yeah,
your pants.
exactly, exactly.
Yes, and truly, if the folks listening in on this take nothing else away from this episode, um, hear me now. Wear the pants that you want to wear in life. Because good grief, if we can't wear the pants that we want to wear in life, then what on earth are we doing?
Yeah, what is it all for? I mean, come on. And but that whole retreat though, just getting us to embrace our wildness and
Yeah,
just seeing how everything is connected and it's
yeah,
all part of the story was just so amazing. And one of the books that you suggested to me
yeah.
to
What was?
read, Gerald May,
Oh yeah,
Wisdom of Wilderness.
definitely. I'm looking. I feel like I probably got it here somewhere. There it is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
mine's I actually know where mine is. It's right over there on the shelf. Yeah, there it is right there.
yeah,
But that book is amazing. And that's one of the things he explores are just these super practical
yeah.
lessons from his observations in the wilderness.
Yes, yes.
It's a really great book. So if you're looking into, sort of pursuing this thing that Aram's talking about, that's a must read for sure. Gerald May's Wisdom of the
Experiencing the
Wilderness.
healing power of nature is the subtitle. Yeah, and it's true. It's what it is. What
So
it
you
is.
had all these on that trip. You had us do all these activities. We already talked about the spiral meditation. Um, there were some other things we did. The pie, Rob Bell's pie from fanning the flame, or I think
Tending.
tending the
Yes.
fire, tending to your fire. I can't remember what it's called. But his audiobook on burnout. So what was your approach in trying to find these different activities for our retreat specifically? Like your goal obviously was to help us discover renewal. Was there some philosophy you had going in, or like
Yeah.
uh walk us through your
Oh,
process? How do you
process.
pass through the
Process.
pastors?
That's fun. Yeah, 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 yeah. Um, you know, well, I guess I think of both just like the poetry that we intersperse, as well as the practices that are, like contemplative, meditative practices that sink into our senses, and to root into place, to pay attention to what's going on around us, what's going on within us, and to like introduce some concepts for further reflection. Hopefully, some concepts that kind of like seed these ideas that then will will stick with folks. And like all of those different things I like to think of as like having a quiver, like as if I was an archer.
Yeah.
So I'm Sagittarius, so I've got the arrow archer imagery, and so I often think that I have just like this quiver. I guess you could call it a toolbox, but I like the idea of a quiver because um, I'll go into a retreat like Discovering Renewal, like we shared together, and I try to go in with I probably have um, 3 or 4 times more practices, poems, ideas in my quiver than there's actually. Yes, I see what you're holding up there. Yeah, there's actually like space or time for it. And
Yeah.
so then what that I usually have like a almost like a I think of it almost as like a liturgical flow that I
Yeah.
want the day to have, right?
Yeah.
Like we're gonna get together, we're gonna ground and like get oriented to one another, oriented to space. And then there's gonna be some silence, there's gonna be some conversation, there's gonna be some poetry, there's gonna be some multi-sensory practice, and then ultimately want to like land at a place where we're then sending out, right? What's the benediction moment,
Yeah.
the good sending encouraging moment. So I oftentimes will think in terms of a flow of kind of a liturgy, but having a quiver full of possibilities, a general idea of the flow, then it kind of frees me up to just get to be with the people who
Yeah.
are there, and kind of tune in to um, both the individuals, the human people that are part of the group itself, which has its own sort of personality that's
Yes.
to get to know, and then like the non-human persons as well, right? Like I've got a little bit of an animist streak through me, and so like I'm tuning into like what are the trees saying to us, like
Yeah.
what are the creatures that are engaging with us? What about the wind? What about the bodies of water we're encountering? What about the stones that I'm both walking on or holding in my hand? But just get to tune in to like what's going on, um and then like knowing what's in my quiver, tuning into what's going on, I can like try to pull something out and see if I can hit the bullseye, right?
Yeah.
Like I pull something out of the quiver and let's see. And it doesn't always, but sometimes it does. Usually manages to at least like get on the
Yeah.
board. And just like posing these things as invitations for folks. Not as I don't know, like not as homework assignments, or not as assignments that you can do right or wrong, but invitations to deepen your relationship with the stuff of wildness all around you, the stuff of wildness within you. But all of that said, I'm going to answer the same question again, but in a different way.
Go for it.
Like what is the process of preparing for and guiding an experience of discovering renewal in the wilderness or in wildish spaces? um I guess this is, maybe I shouldn't say this out loud um because then the secret's out, but I found that the main thing people need is just like permission to get out there on the trail. And
Yeah.
more often than not, if I can like get people out there, give them permission to be there together, and then step out of the way,
Yeah.
stuff of wildness like does the rest.
Oh
So
man.
everything else is just like icing on the cake, but like the main thing is just giving people permission, and like helping them to feel like a sense of security and togetherness, right? Like I've got my
Right.
wilderness medical certification, so like you're safe to come with me. You're just like giving people permission and a sense of emotional and physical kind of safety and security going out there, and then just get out of the way
Yeah.
and like let the goodness happen.
Well, that is a big part of it too, because so many times people who are in, well, it's just because of our society, regardless of what their profession might be, if it's a pastor or if it's a lawyer or a doctor or something like that,
Yeah.
then they may have the false belief that going out into the wilderness for a day is not being productive, right? So they might have this feeling like, oh, I'd be judged. People are going to think I'm just wasting the day away. I'm just being lazy. I'm not doing something in the office or whatever. But what you're doing is you're saying this is a retreat for pastors and we're
Mm-hmm.
going to be doing some exercises on the trail. So that way, in their mind, they're like, okay, this is not just a walk. Like, I'm not just wasting time here. Like, this is a counseling session, you know. So let me
Yeah,
write
yeah.
this off. Let me write this off as a work retreat.
I
But
love
really, what you're doing is you're just giving them the permission to get out on the trail, and then you just let nature do its work.
That's right.
Um,
Yeah, we can get you some continuing education units, whatever you need for your
yeah,
judicatory body to like justify the fact that you just did this thing that is
yeah,
so good for you and so good for your ministry, whether you are a professional minister or whether you're like ministering to the world in other
in other
ways.
ways, yeah, like a
Yeah.
teacher or something.
Because it's all like this is what like one of my one of my favorite little like nuggets of insight. So the Hebrew Bible, right at the very beginning, right, there's just this vastness and void and this hovery divinity, like divine stuff hovering over this oceanic depths of chaos.
Yeah,
There's a term there in Hebrew, tohu vabohu, tohu vabohu, right there, and I think it's in the very first or second verse of Genesis chapter 1, and it's the idea of it. It's like the chaos of wildness. I'm not a Hebrew scholar, so I may be paraphrasing, but tohu vabohu, this the depths and the chaos of wildness that is
yeah,
like swirling and twirling around, and that like the chaos of wildness, the depths of wildness, what does that do? It precedes creativity, right?
mm,
Creation comes after this like mythic encounter with the stuff of wildness. So if we can take some wisdom from that, if we can like look at that story, that narrative, that sort of flow, that divine flow, I like to think that the chaos of wildness, the stuff of wildness, wasn't like it's not a negative thing. It's like a substantial thing that
yeah.
precedes acts and postures of creativity.
Mm.
And can that be the same for us? Like, do we need to go into encounters with the stuff of wildness in order to like bolster and fuel and deepen and sustain and inform our creative contributions to the world?
Right. And so that would look at deconstruction, or as Richard Orr would say, order, disorder, reorder,
Come on.
as
Yes.
not a negative thing, but it's actually a positive step to a greater future. It's not something that you're tearing down. It's actually more about building up, but you have to enter
Yeah.
into the chaos before you can enter into the life. Kind of like the cross. That's a message someone could take from the cross. The going into the death, because that's the only way you can get to resurrection is through death. We have to go through winter to get through spring,
Yeah.
and then all through Genesis and Exodus, there's these stories of water being this place of chaos, like in the flood or in the crossing of the Red Sea. But it's getting through that chaos that leads us to this new reality, this new world. So yeah, so man,
Rogers. Absolutely, right. That's like, well, and it's interesting. And I do want to just I like to pause and just like a little bit of a side note, except that I think it's like really central and vital
go for it.
when we're talking about the concept of wilderness, to recognize that wilderness as a conceptual term, a conceptual thing, is complicated, and oftentimes there's just like there is these like the image of renewal and pristine vistas and fields of daisies, and then there's like also the red and tooth and claw, like it's the brambles and the thorns and everything. So wilderness is a complicated term insofar as it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
Right.
It's also complicated um because the idea of wilderness, or some ideas of wilderness, have been used here in in the country where you and I live, Daniel, have been used to delegitimize the the lives of whole people groups, right? When the experiment of America was getting started, there were these concepts of manifest destiny, of
Yeah.
terra nullius, this Latin legal idea that the state can just claim land as its own if it is if it is empty. And so the would lead the state to claim that this land is empty, therefore it's ours. But it was inhabited by
Yeah.
indigenous inhabitants, and so these
Savages, right? Is the term, right?
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And created these ideas of wilderness, almost created justification for genocide, for land theft. And so I like to pause and name that anytime
Yeah.
we're exploring and engaging with ideas of wilderness, it's important to not just to like not forget that there's problematic
Yeah.
elements.
Just name the elephant in the room. Just name it, right?
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
I think of the wilderness as, you know, being a place to claim. You kind of think of the children of Israel wandering in the wilderness for 40 years, right? Before they go take this land from these people. Um,
Yeah.
but you also can think of it in more positive light, like with Jesus, who entered into the wilderness, right? To prepare
Yes.
himself for ministry. So yeah, it has a lot of connotations. And it is important to name those because you never know who might be listening, what sort of trauma they may have undergone or their ancestors may have undergone. That's still a really difficult thing for them to come to terms with. And so just naming that can just be like a nod to them. Hey, I'm with you. I'm here
Yes.
with you. You know, I'm not ignoring the
Those
yeah,
experiences. Yeah,
right.
exactly. And yeah, and the connotations of wilderness are complicated. And alongside of that, like we as if we're someone, if I'm someone who counts myself as a practitioner of wild spirituality, right? A practitioner of or someone who resides at that confluence of wildness and spirituality. Um, I'm responsible for how I use the idea of wilderness, right?
Yeah.
Which actually I oftentimes when I think about that, about how complicated the concept of wilderness is, and how like as a I'm embodied in this world as a white cisgender man, um, the descendant of people who settled on Turtle Island on the North American continent, and as such, like I'm responsible for how I approach uh, my relationship with wilderness. I
Yeah.
need for it to be complicated, and oftentimes I think about that in relation to hermeneutics, to biblical
Mm.
interpretation, right? Like I think so often um, there's this temptation to ignore the complications and not take personal responsibility for the ways that we are engaging and employing, for instance, biblical texts or religious narratives, right? But um, biblical interpretation, I think one of the heartbeats of having a mature faith, a mature relationship with a sacred text is like you don't get to shirk responsibility for your interpretation. Like you have to lean in and say, like, this is how I read this text, and here are the things that result. Like because I'm reading this text in this way, it has these implications, and it's easier, and it's easier, and maybe feels like safer to pin the blame for the implications of certain readings of certain texts on some other authority, whether it's whether it's a religious leader. Well, they told me that it means that, so therefore it must mean that, or even just claiming that, well, it can only mean one thing.
Yeah.
um I think that's like not taking responsibility for what we need to take responsibility for. But it takes grit, it takes gall, it takes guts to take responsibility for the ways that we interpret sacred texts, the ways that we approach this world, right?
Yeah.
The moral values that we bring into that inform our day to day. A great place to get some guts and grit and gall is to go for a little jaunt in the wilderness. Just saying.
Hey, there you go. Bringing it all back. Yeah, that is one thing that people, especially from my tradition, face is, hey, this is the only way to read this passage. And if you don't read the passage in this way, then the whole Bible, just throw it out, throw out Jesus, throw out God is love, throw it all out because it doesn't matter because it's all false if this one thing fails. And so what happens when they are confronted with a biology 101 class or spending time in the wilderness or whatever, and that one thing doesn't seem so as I don't know, unbreakable as they thought it was. It just destroys it all. It tears the whole thing down, right?
Right.
And so
Right.
having that openness to say, okay, we could be wrong about this. We
Yeah.
probably have got this. In fact, we probably are wrong about this.
Yeah.
Is a huge step in not only just being a humble person, but in taking responsibility for the interpretations that you have. I was thinking about Jesus, and people are
As you
always,
do.
as you do, why was Jesus baptized? That's weird. Did he need his sins forgiven? Well, maybe not as an individual, but as part of this greater story of Israel. There were a lot of sins that needed to be forgiven, that needed to be repented of, right? All of the and one of those major things that he launched into after his baptism were those interpretations that weren't so helpful. You've heard it's been said, but I say
Yes.
to you, I'm taking responsibility through my baptism in
Oh, yeah.
identifying with the culture and understanding that I have to move past, this nation that I'm a part of. And
Right.
now, since I've taken that responsibility, I have the ability to say, okay, you've heard it's been said this way, but now I say to you this way, you know?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so
Yeah. Well, and I really appreciate too, just, yeah, you naming the sort of collective, a what is the collective concept of sin,
yeah,
right? Because yeah, it can be really tempting. I know, like I came up in and like in a conservative evangelical background. I count myself now as I'm kind of more lefty leaning progressive type that maybe than some of the folks who are core to your audience. So I hope you'll all still
as
still
soon
have
as you said ecofeminism, those
they all,
people are already gone. So you don't have to worry about those
we've
folks.
got
It's
like
okay.
two listeners left
Yeah.
now. No, but I think I know from my religious inheritance, like I had the tendency to get like stuck on my own personal sense of shortcomings and would it was a little later that it dawned on me that like sin is a systemic issue. Like
Yeah.
like sin isn't so much about like my private thoughts as it is about what is like happening in the world and how we are collectively either oftentimes maybe both because it's complicated but either perpetuating these systems of oppression
Right.
or crafting and constructing liberating alternatives to these systems of oppression.
Well, one of the things that Kevin and Lee on this podcast talked about before
Hmm.
was a porn addiction, right?
Yeah.
And that's looked at as a very individualistic, like, but then you look at the media and how our media pushes that, right? The hypersexualization of everything. The fact that there's a whole industry out there that exploits people of both genders, to put themselves in these situations for an extra quick buck or something like that. And the system that made them need the extra quick buck to begin with,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like this whole world there. And so it's not an individual issue, it's a systemic issue.
Yeah.
And that's true for for all of our sins, from things that we consider just private little thoughts in our head or whatever to major issues. It all goes back to all of our responsibility. I think about I think about Daniel in captivity. He prayed for forgiveness for the whole nation, and he was just a kid when he was taken into captivity. Like, what is he praying for forgiveness for? It wasn't his fault, and yet it's just that accepting responsibility as a member of the human race. We're all in this together, and what's great about the wilderness is it
Tell me.
teaches you that, right?
Mm-hmm.
The trash that you pick up when you're hiking through, and I know you carry a bag to pick up the trash that you see.
All right.
Um, that's all of our problem, not just the guy who threw it in there. It's so much bigger than just any one person. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
man.
We
Well,
are nature. We are nature, seeing nature. We are a nature with a concept of nature, nature weeping, nature speaking of nature to nature. That's Susan Griffin wrote.
love it.
I love it too. It's just well, and I think I have this other quote I know you've got on your desk there a Terry Tempest Williams quote from our hike together, from
Yes,
our
I
hike
do.
together.
I do. It's
There's
under
this
the
other
glass on my desk.
there's this other line that she has, um, and she's making a statement to the Senate subcommittee on forest and public lands management,
Yeah.
back in the mid 90s.
Awesome.
And um, so there's this line. She says, "What do we wish? To be whole, to be complete. Wildness," she says, "reminds us what it means to be human. Wildness reminds us what it means to be human, what we are connected to rather than what we are separate from." So there's oftentimes there's this idea that going into a wild space is about detaching from the world. But I just like to come back to the idea, maybe like land this ship a little bit,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the idea of, like I talked a lot about the confluence of wildness and spirituality, right? Which is like this beautiful venue of formation. Wilderness is a place where spiritual formation happens, where transformation happens, where Jesus goes to wrestle with the devil, where Jacob wrestles with angels, right? Like, this space of sublime, divine, numinous encounter where like we are shaped. But then, like, why? Right? Like, why that formation? And I think this is a really important piece, or else we're just then stuck in the wilderness. But like, that's not what wilderness is for. Wilderness is a place that we're meant to go, but not remain. Wilderness is meant to orient us back to our community, right? To remind us what we're connected to rather than what we're separate from. And so ultimately, we go and camp at the confluence of wildness and spirituality for the common good, like
Yeah.
so that we are strengthened, renewed, informed, formed, and ultimately reoriented, hopefully again and again, finding some rhythms of regular connection with the stuff of wildness, so that we can be regularly reoriented to our work in the world, to the good stuff that we've got to contribute, to making a more beautiful, loving, just, liberating world.
Yeah,
Come on.
man. I love it. Preach it.
Yes.
Preach it.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
you said you were a children's minister. Maybe you need to be a pastor. No,
yeah.
man. Seriously though, I really do. I love everything about you. I love your ministry. I love your attitude. I love what you have to say. I love discovering renewal. Um, that's why I'm coming back, man. You sold it for me, and hopefully some of our listeners can come too and tell us that they heard it from you on this podcast. That'd be awesome.
So
But
fun. It's
yes,
mutual, Daniel. It's mutual. I'm a big fan of who you are and how you show up in this world.
I appreciate it so much. Appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for joining me. This has been a delight, and I cannot wait for people to join this conversation with us. And is there anything else we need to know?
Uh,
Any resources, any websites, anything like that
oh,
that we can?
sure. So I have I'll be doing that retreat again, with Montreat Conference Center, which, folks can go to, I think it's montreat.org, to check that out. They're hosting that retreat, Discovering Renewal. I have an upcoming online course called Wildness and Spirituality for the Common Good, through this great organization called the School of Global Citizenry. That's not live in this moment, though it may be by the time this airs. So I'll send you that website as well, Daniel. You can put in
Perfect.
the show notes. And then, yeah, my personal website is arammitchell.com. And when I am in my rhythms of creativity, when
Yes.
I'm practicing what I preach, then I write some reflections there from time to time,
Dude,
as well as mention in these different projects that are happening.
my friend Mike, he talks about on his website, he has daily articles or whenever I feel like it or something like that.
Yes,
So
that
um,
sounds about
yeah,
right.
we'll put all those links in the show notes then, and people can go and check out your website and attend your online class if they'd like, and come to Discovering Renewal. Read some Gerald May. Who knows? But
Fabulous. And I would
yeah,
just say one final word from me, to everyone. Don't forget, wear the pants that you want to wear.
that's, hey, that is the main quote from this episode. Wear the pants you want to wear, because if you're not doing that, what are we even doing?
Exactly. I love you, buddy. This is good. Thank you for having me.
Oh man, thank you for being on. I hope you all have a great day. God bless, and we'll see you in the next episode. Okay, there we go. How about that?
Woo!